Daniel Levy at Tottenham, seemingly speaking out these days at a fans forum alongside Ange Postecoglou, and now to the good people at Bloomberg. If Daniel Levy upped and left tomorrow, how would various people, including people close-ish to him, like Mr. Jordan, how would they sum up his Tottenham legacy? He's confirmed that he might just be open to selling a stake in Tottenham Hotspur. This is interesting from Levy, so stick with it.
I've got no real interest to leave Tottenham, but I have a duty to consider anything that anyone may want to propose. And it's not about me, it's about what's right for the club. We have 30,000 shareholders who own approximately 13.5%. We run this club as if it's a public company. If anyone wants to make a serious proposition to the board of Tottenham, we will consider it along with our advisors. And if we felt it was in the interest of the club, we would be open to anything.
Has anyone made an offer?
Over the years, many people have made offers, but there's never been an offer that's been...
Well, give us an idea of what those offers have looked like. Where have they come from?
All parts of the world. The Far East, the Middle East, America. But nothing has been put on our table that we felt has been in the interest of shareholders.
Does that mean it was just insufficient in terms of size? Or it was the wrong kind of people and the wrong kind of contract? Lots
of reasons. For us, as a board, we look at we're only custodians of this club. We want to take this club to another level. I think we've shown progression over the last 20 years. We've made a big investment in our capital projects, in our team. And if someone came along and we felt that it could take us to another level, we'd look at it.
They'd look at it. Simon, you're closer to this fella, I think, than many. If they are going to go to the next level, and I think they're en route to doing that, might we see it happen without Daniel involved?
I don't know the answer to that question, because I don't know who would want to invest in Tottenham Hotspur and at what level.
Well, it might be somebody you know, and I know, because at the start of the year he met Nasser Al-Khelaifi, of course, chairman of Qatar-based investments, and Spurs was a subject of interest from the private equity fund MSP Sports Capital. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of individuals, Nasser and others, with enormous funds who seem to be coming out of the ether.
Yeah, Daniel's not telling anyone that he wants to sell Tottenham Hotspur. He's talking about the fact that if there were an offer, it would be remiss of him not to consider it, because as 86% shareholders in Tottenham Hotspur, Erik, and Daniel being a 30% shareholder of that 86%, he owns 25% of Tottenham. You've got 13% of minority shareholders that have to have their rights protected as well. So it's incumbent upon someone like Daniel Levy, if an offer comes in for Tottenham Hotspur or a proportion of it, to consider it in the rounds and make sure that all of the different parts of Tottenham Hotspur, being the shareholders, are considered, because he has a fiduciary responsibility to do so. Daniel also turned around and said a year ago that when we were talking about potential interest in Tottenham Hotspur at the level of $3.5 billion, that wouldn't get people in the back door. So let's have it right. If you're talking about somebody coming into Tottenham Hotspur, we can't get Manchester United sold at $5 billion because no one's prepared to pay much more than that. If Daniel doesn't think someone's going to get in the door at $3.5 billion, even in the back door, and he must be looking for somewhere near to $5 billion for Tottenham Hotspur. If someone's coming in that way and wants to invest in that way, it's about what the value of that cash will do for Tottenham. There can be no doubt. Compartmentalise Tottenham Hotspur into two categories: the economic state of Tottenham Hotspur that was inherited by Erik and the economic condition that they're in now, and the on-field stuff. The on-field stuff, the report card says probably a C, because they should and could have won certain tournaments, and it's probably unpalatable for most Tottenham fans to consider the fact that they haven't won anything in 15 years. The off-field stuff, I think, with due respect, he's without peer. He's built a £1 billion stadium. He's used money that has ultimately, in part, been funded by Tottenham, but other parts of the economic scale of borrowing money at a rate that you can't borrow anywhere else, because Daniel's been so adept and adroit at achieving that. He's built arguably the best stadium in the world. He's put Tottenham on an economic footing where they made world record profits 4 years ago. And there's so many things about Tottenham Hotspur economically.
But on the pitch, Simon,
that's why I've compartmentalised it.
I mean, to compete with Manchester City, though, It's going to need investment.
Well, but then and that's if you want to characterise it that way, you cannot.
But surely that's the only way to characterise it, to go to the next level.
If you characterise it on the basis that Tottenham's sole focus in life is to compete with Man City, who operate to a whole different set of principles, their economic model has been completely different to anyone else's, and may well be different to everyone else's besides Chelsea, which was that people came in and decided that they didn't care about the consequences of how much a football club cost. They just were going to put as much money behind it. Tottenham's is a different model. It's similar, actually, to Liverpool. And the only difference between Liverpool and Tottenham Hotspur is Liverpool got a guy in a dugout that was capable of achieving an outcome, and Tottenham, as yet, haven't done it.
Yeah, but they've brought in really good managers. So why haven't
That's
they
the
been?
point.
Why haven't they been successful under Daniel Levy? But they've been successful everywhere else they've been.
Again, if you look at the timing of these managers, and I would argue exactly the same thing as you, which is Daniel spoke the other day and talked about Pochettino, and Pochettino got you to a certain space and it was close, but there was no cigar at the end of it. So he went after two guys that were proven nailed-on winners at stages in their career. You got these guys perhaps at a different time. You might have had a different outcome from them. You got them at the time that you got them with the mentality that they had towards where they were working and what they thought of Tottenham Hotspur. You got a different Conte and a different Mourinho. That doesn't excuse Daniel from the complicitness.
Well, he should be looking at himself, shouldn't he? You know, did he give them everything they needed to be successful? These are successful type personalities. They weren't at Spurs.
I think he's been pretty introspective. I think he has done a lot of self-examination.
I think in recent times...
Well, he needs to, doesn't he?
In recent times, I think also you've got to look at it's very good that Conte, and I have this hobby horse about Conte, it's really good for Conte to tell everyone else what was the problem, but weren't you supposed to be part of the solution? Changing people's culture, changing the attitude, removing the mediocrity and the selfishness that he accused players from was in part his responsibility. What did you bring to the table? You walked through the door, bitched and moaned from the moment you got in there, and walked out the door bitching and moaning.
Well, this weekend there's 6 players that he brought to the club which will play in this London derby this weekend, and they're in really good form.
Correct.
So
why didn't he extract
no issues with his judgment, by the way.
No, but never said there was.
Martin, with Conte, what can you do for me? Not what can I do for you.
Yeah, but...
And neither should there be. That's not a badge of honour.
He wanted, maybe with more support, then Conte could have been successful as he was at the previous.
But
Jim,
again,
some of these managers are coming there with incredible records.
The comparison...
You'd have to look at yourself and say, if you come here...
Yeah, but it's wrong place, wrong time.
If we start a new radio station tomorrow and suddenly you're not very good
Martin.
at your job, we were saying you can't be getting the same support. You've been one of the top in
Look
position
at Klopp.
for years.
I use Klopp example. Klopp didn't win anything for 3.5 years. He got given latitude. He got given the brevity to be able to make decisions. He never got given all the amounts of money. He had to sell Coutinho to get the funding to get Becker and Virgil van Dijk in. They kickstart the side 3 years after losing, or 2.5 years after losing various finals. The momentum was there. Mourinho and Conte didn't want to wait 2.5 years, didn't want to build, and there's a school of thought which says, well, you shouldn't have employed him in the first place, because if you want win-now managers, you've got to give them win-now money.
Was Daniel Levy working in the best interest of the football club when 6 days before a League Cup final he jettisons the manager, Mourinho?
Well, it depends.
Talk to me about that.
It depends if you believe.
Can't be right.
If you believe the narrative that he had an en masse group of players coming to him saying they refused to play for that manager.
No, he couldn't take it that the manager would walk out the door and say he was the only manager who won a trophy in the last number of years. That's what he couldn't take.
I think that's
that's not working in the best interest of the football club.
I think that's narrowing. Listen, if you
that's
believe,
how it looks.
If you believe that to be the case, then that's fine. The alternate side of that argument is, and it's balanced upon some intellectual capital that I may have that you don't have, which is the fact that you've got confronted as an owner of a football club with a group of players that are suggesting they don't want to play for that manager anymore. Now, whether you should acquiesce to that mob or not is a different dynamic, but the point is that it isn't just a case of, I don't believe that Daniel's sitting there going, the last thing I want is this guy winning something, because it will create a situation where I'm not as popular as I want to be.
Second guess it for me, Simon. By the time Tottenham win the Premier League, will Levy be there?
I don't know. I mean, listen, how are Tottenham going to win the Premier League in the foreseeable future?
By bringing in new investment.
Possibly.
And competing with City.
But hang on. First and foremost...
Even competing with Newcastle.
Let me ask you a question. What does that investment look like? I'm a shareholder. I sell my shares. Where's that money going?
Well, the owner pays for it. He buys the shares.
Yeah, so where's that money going? I've got shares. I'm selling you the shares.
It doesn't go into players, does it?
Well, no, it goes in my pocket because I'm a shareholder. So there's a balance between how much someone's prepared to pay for the shareholding that they've got against what they're prepared to invest. And you've still got to meet the obligations of what Tottenham Hotspur can achieve economically based upon the landscape of financial fair play.
Do you think we'll see new investment come in?
I wouldn't be surprised either way.
I think that seems to be the vibe.
I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Yeah.
But he's got a manager that isn't going to be screaming at him from dawn till dusk that they must give them £250 million every time the transfer window opens. You've got a different kind of manager there. You've got a 4-year deal going with this fella, which is a very different dynamic than he's given to anybody else. There's a lot more about Tottenham Hotspur right now than there has been for some time, because you've got a manager in the dugout
playing with freedom, aren't they?
He wants to be there, Martin.
Yeah, he wants to be there.
He wants to be there.
That's the difference.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.